Beautiful, beautiful. Something about a room full of singing men, right? You know, for years we're getting all this bad press that it's the women that's carrying the whole musical scene. But I think room full of guys sounds pretty good, don't you? Yeah. Tell the guy next to him, you're pretty good. Yeah. Trying to get in good with all the musicians in the room because I'm going to be talking a lot about the athletes for the rest of the weekend. And usually it's one or the other. It's that rare guy that scores all the touchdowns and is the tenor soloist in the choir. But my background is that of a child who was always in awe of athletes. I just thought that that was the highest pinnacle you could climb, is to be considered an athlete. I grew up in Philadelphia where we added an extra syllable. They were athletes. And I remember thinking, man, you know, I would love to be in that number. But I can describe my entire childhood for you in one sentence. I weighed back then what I weigh now, and I was 4 feet shorter. Last name was Butterworth. That's a painful memory right there, friends. You know, it was terrible. You know, and I thought I might have made a good offensive lineman, but my mother wouldn't let me go out. She's afraid that, you know, I would get hurt. And I'd look at myself and I think, you know, there's really nothing on my body that you can injure unless there's some kind of, you know, damaged cellulite or something like that. I mean, you couldn't get to anything solid. So why do I need to forsake athletics? So she had me join the band, and there's nothing wrong with joining the band, but I was like the back 3 rows of the marching band, and just really embarrassed. And at that time in that school, if you were an athlete, you were it, and if you weren't, you were nothing. And the whole peer pressure thing, and you know, why do the athletes get all the pretty girlfriends, and why can't I get a girlfriend, and what's that all about? And I'm in 9th grade, and the social studies teacher says, Butterworth, stay after class, I want to talk to you. So I go up to Mr. Warren's desk, and he says, I want to ask you a question. I said, yes, sir. He said, have you ever thought about going out for the track team? And I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. The track team. I mean, kids make fun of me all the time. Now teachers are inviting me to stay after class for like one-on-one personal heckling. And I remember looking at him and saying, well, my little adolescent squeaky voice, well, sir, I don't think I'm very fast. And he kind of hit a grin at that point. He said, yeah, I know that, Butterworth. I'm not talking about the running events. I'm talking about what we call the weight man events, the shot put. Ball that you put, and the discus. You've seen the famous statue of the discus thrower, and apparently my face went ash. He said, relax, relax. They wear clothes now when they throw this thing. And he says, I think you have real potential. I think you should go home and ask your mom and dad if you can join the track team. And this was like, oh my gosh, I would be an athlete. And so I went home and told my mom and dad, and they were very skeptical, very reluctant, and it was ridiculous. I mean, they were having me sign forms that, you know, I won't try to catch these things after they've been thrown, and, you know, and I mean, medical releases, all kinds of, but finally, I became a weight man. I became an athlete, and I was just in heaven. It was a glorious, glorious time. Now, there were issues. I just being frank, not to be too proud and cocky, I had really good form. I mean, I could slide across that circle or spin around that circle really, really well. I was a little off on the strength side. I didn't have a lot of muscle to put that shot and throw that discus. I mean, I would slide across that circle, and I'd let that thing go, and boom, there it is, like right there. You know, only guy they measured with a ruler. But I remember refusing to be discouraged because this is really, really great. Now, I was the fifth man on the shot put and discus part of the team. And those of you that know track, you score points by coming in either first, second, or third. So that meant as the fifth man on our own squad, the only way I would ever score any points is if the other team forfeited and there's kind of malaria working through our squad. But again, it was like, man, I'm an athlete. This is going to be great. So just keep that in mind. High school legend, Butterworth with the shot put and the discus, all right? Now, I'm also, every Sunday, being taken to church by my parents, and we went to a very socially active church. And by that I mean they had a full cadre of athletic programs for the church athlete. Church softball, church basketball, church bocce ball, church canasta, church bowling. They had, you name it, they'd make a church team out of it, and it was big. So one spring at this time, they said to themselves, we've never had an all-church track meet. Let's invite other churches and come to our high school track, and we'll sponsor a track meet. It'll be great. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? There aren't a lot of athletes that go to church. They're a bunch of heathens, you know? And so I could wipe up on the church track meet. I could probably win the shot put and the discus. So I got really excited, you know? And we hosted the thing. It was a spring Saturday, and everybody came out. And I would always do the same kind of psych them out before the event, and that is I would go through the circle because, like I said, I thought I had really good form. I just wouldn't have the implement so they couldn't see how weak I was, you know. But I'm spinning around with the fake discus, and I'm sliding through with the shot put, and these guys are like, whoa, look at that fat kid. He knows what he's doing. We're going to be in trouble. And then these guys who never even saw this stuff, they're like, do you have to spin like the fat kid, or can you just throw it? Boom, and they're sending it into orbit. And like that, it was over. I didn't come in first, second, or third in either event. Guys that had never done this stuff just wiped me out. So I remember I'm sitting on the edge of the concrete shot put circle, contemplating whether life is worth going on. And my friend Bobby comes over and he says, how'd you do? I said, I didn't do well. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I didn't score a point. In either event? In either event. He said, wow. He said, well, I got good news. I said, you do? What's good news? He says, you're going to have another chance. I said, no, I'm not. I did both events. It's over already. He said, oh, I'm not talking about the shot and the discus. We need you to run a race for us. I said, what? He said, yeah, you know, the guy that's supposed to run the 440 just pulled up with a bad leg. You're going to need to run the 440. Now, that's the 400 meter. It was all yards back then before, you know, the Queen got involved. But one lap around the track, around the high school football field. Everybody remember it? You can see it in your mind's eye. And this is old school. This is like cinder track, right? This has got ugly written all over it. And I'm still protesting, and they've pulled my shoes off, and they're putting runner spikes on me. And I remember standing up, and, you know, all the spikes are in the front, and you're kind of automatically on your toes, and I'm thinking, whoo, I feel fast. You know, this could be what's been hidden all these years. I mean, I could be a runner. And so we went over to the 50-yard line in front of the home stand and lined up in our lanes. And next thing you know, gun sounds, we are off. And I realized as soon as I started, you know, I didn't check with anyone on the strategy for this race. I don't know how exactly it's to be done. And I just hear, it's only a lap, it's only a lap. So I just figured, it's a sprint. It's all you've got all the way through. So I take off and I start running the first 110, which would be from the 50-yard line by the home stands over to that goalpost over there. Now, already I'm doing the math, and I'm thinking, all right, I need to bring this back into bite size, issues here. Let's do it 110 at a time. When I get to the first 110 mark, I want to still be in the race. I don't want to embarrass myself. I want to be with all the other guys wherever they are. So I'm taking off, and I get to that goalpost, and I achieved my first goal. I am with the group. We are all there. And it's at that point where my mind starts playing tricks on me. And I say to myself, well, that wasn't a very hard goal to achieve. Let's pump it up a little bit more. Let's say by the time I get to the halfway mark, which would be the 50-yard line by the visitors' football stands, I'm going to be in first place. And that's where the tonnage was really moving. I mean, I got that thing in gear, and I got all the way over to that the stands, visitor stands, and I had first place all to myself. Now I know for sure I'm a runner. It's clear. Next 110 goal. From there to that football goalpost, I'm going to break away. I'm going to have first place all to myself because there were still some guys around me. So I get over, I'm going to have this goal to the 3:30, and because I'm going to break away, another goal will be by the time I get to the 3:30, I will polish off all the things I want to say in my victory speech. And so I am really going. And I get to the 3:30, and that's where it happened. And what I mean by that is I will tell you the rest of the story as it was later told to me. I had no idea your body could hurt that bad. And I get to the 3:30, and now I'm not even running in a dignified manner. I'm running in a very unorthodox, whoa, I am ready to just drop. I don't know how. And my teammates are going, watch out, everybody, fat boy's going down, and it's like, oh, well, this is a wonderful gift of fellowship from the body of believers at my church. And they're saying, clear way, protect yourselves, and it's like, what in the world? And I just remember, I just felt over at the 3:30 mark, I was spitting cinders. It was horrible. And nothing could feel worse. Well, about that time, all the other runners come up. And they're like, how are we supposed to get around this thing? We don't take, is this a steeplechase? What do we just scale it? What do we do? And they're all spiking me. And it was horrible. It was without question the worst experience of my life up to that point. And I've had a few years that I've been out of high school to think about this. And I've decided to come up with a whole different approach. I'm telling you the story. It took me years to even admit to it, but part of it is I have a whole new focus when I tell that story. Because, guys, you can't deny the fact that I won the 3:30. And the only issue was that wasn't the race I signed up for. And so, with that as kind of a silly but hopefully memorable anecdote to kick this thing off tonight and into the whole weekend, I want to look at this whole idea that is in the New Testament of life is a race. We are runners. And what does that really mean? So I hope that I can give you just a little bit of a teaser tonight of what we're going to do after we've all had a good night's sleep after a long day of travel. Tomorrow morning, evening, and Sunday morning, as we look at what it really means to run this race the way God had in mind. I hope you'll bring a Bible or know how to get to it on your phone. Bring some paper if you want to jot down some notes. But I want to begin tonight with the classic passage on life as a race, written by in the book of Hebrews. I believe Paul wrote that, but I know it's questionable. So, kind of Paul in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Very familiar passage, but worth looking at again. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. That set of words gives us this whole aspect of life as a race. And it's not just an admonition to go run it. He tells us what to do in deeper terms so that we know how to deal with it. So in Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, I see three elements that are working against us running our race, and three antidotes to each of those problems, okay? So if you're a note taker, that's the way it's going to look. For example, here's number one. Why are we imbalanced? Here's my answer. Because we have a bad case of the hazies. Hazies. A bad case of the hazies. What in the world are the hazies? The hazies are losing sight of what's important. We are imbalanced. We are not running our race fully because we have haziness. We have priorities, we have goals, but they get blurry because we get distracted, okay? I would say there's probably not a guy in this room that can't articulate some sort of life goal or priority list that you've made at some point in your life. And it's God, and it's your family, and it's being a good worker, and it's being a member of your church, and it's being a contributing member to your community. And we all have kind of similar, and then they get very much more specific. But the issue is we've got priorities. What's that all about? It's because we get distracted. There's like a smoke, a haze, a glaze. Haziness comes in and distorts. Now, if this was a room full of people that lived in Southern California, I could just say, it's what it looks like every morning down there. It's the smog. It just, you don't trust air you can't see, they say down there, And so it's like, what does that really look like in your life? I assure you, if it's anything like in my life, there's an awful lot of haze out there that goes on. One of the things that I get to do, and by the way, as this frustrated athlete, God's opened the door, and in all these years of speaking, I've been invited to speak to 28 of the 32 National Football League teams. And it just amazes me that I get to speak to these NFL teams. And then it dawned on me, well, they like me because they know there's no way I'm going to take their job away. I mean, this is the fat kid who grew up, that kind of thing. But oftentimes, when I'm not there or when I'm not in a church, I will do a business event or a corporate event. And over the years, because they like that I can keep everybody awake and make people laugh, and they give me the worst spot in the speaking day. And that would be right after lunch. And so a very typical event occurred years ago in that bastion of evangelical Christianity. I was working in Las Vegas, and it was a Fortune 500 company, and the CEO was there. You would know the company, you would know the CEO, and they said, okay, look, we're going to let everybody do stuff in the morning with internal speakers, vice presidents and managers, and then we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to put you on. And by the way, lunch is the all-you-can-eat pasta bar. Now think about that, all-you-can-eat pasta bar, and then I'm on at 1:30, all right? And the meeting planner comes up to me almost in my face, and he says, and you better be good, because the CEO is following you. He's giving the state of the company speech, and he wants his people pumped up. And I'm there, okay. So they eat the all-you-can-eat pasta bar. They come into the ballroom, and they introduce me, and I give my speech. But before I go up, the CEO pulls me aside, and he says, did anybody tell you that I'm on after you? I said, yes, sir, I know that. He says, yeah, I don't want them sleeping. I want them pumped up. And it's like, okay, I'll give it everything I've got. You don't have to worry. And he pauses for a second, and he says, I'll never forget, this is great. He says to me, he says, hey, you want to hear what I'm going to do at 3 o'clock? And he was just like a little kid. He was all excited about it, and I didn't know what to say. I mean, typically I would have just said, no, I don't really care, you know. As long as you got my check ready, I'll be out of here, you know. And I said, no, yeah, I want to hear. What are you going to do? He said, he looks around, he starts whispering. He says, nobody knows this. He says, but I got it worked out. I'm going to ride my Harley into the ballroom, and we've got ramps set up on either side of the front, and I'm going to be in head-to-toe black leather, and we're going to put Steppenwolf on the speakers. Get your motor running, hit it on the highway. And he says, this is going to be awesome. And all of a sudden, I'm like, you know, I think I can stick around. It's like, I got to see this. This is going to be a piece of work, I'm sure. So sure enough, I'm glad to say I kept everybody awake. I got everybody pumped up, and everybody's just sitting there. And all of a sudden, you hear from 2 doors that are separating the ballroom from the lobby. You hear rum, rum, rum out in the lobby. And everyone's like, what's going on? And then the oddest thing happened, because he didn't tell me everything that was going to happen in this event. And the one thing he didn't tell me was, you guys know what a smoke machine is? They use it at like rock concerts at stadiums and stuff. It's mostly outdoor kind of stuff. Well, he wanted that kind of effect in the ballroom. So he had a smoke machine, except to be accurate, he had 8 smoke machines that all went out, all went off at the same time. And I've never seen anything like it, guys. In a matter of a split second, you could not see your hand if it was 6 inches in front of your face. Everything was just smoke. And everybody's like, what's going on? What's happening? And you get your motor run, and you're hearing this motor coming up all the way up to the side, and he gets off the motorcycle, and he goes, hey, wow, wasn't that something? And you hear people in the audience going, oh, that sounds like our president. What's he doing in my bad drug dream? You know, what's going on here? I can't believe what. And it's like, it was ridiculous. It took forever to clear the smoke so that this guy could be seen. Now, work with me here. I know God is no respecter of persons, but in that ballroom, on a human level, the most important person was the CEO of that company. And he absolutely could not be seen because this fog, this smoke, this haze distorted what was the important thing that they need to see. Now, I tell you that funny story for a very specific reason. I go back to what I said just a few minutes earlier. I don't think the deal for anybody tonight is, yeah, you're right, I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just a lost soul, and I have no plan. I think all of us have goals. All of us have plans. All of us have prayers, but we just allow distractions to take us away from that. And so what we need is a way to beat the hazies. And here's the word I want you to use. You beat the hazies by pursuing and practicing priorities, okay? Now, I've already said I've got priorities, but listen to those verbs. Pursue them and practice them. Make them a regular part of your life. And if any Christian needs a way to spell it out even more carefully, look at the very first words of verse 2. Fix your eyes on Jesus. We are focused on him. The number one priority is our Lord Jesus. And there's not a guy in the room who probably would disagree with that. But there are plenty of guys in the room, I'm sure, that have had the experience, maybe lately, maybe even right now, where God has gotten very fuzzy in your sight. And you can rationalize it to him. You know, you can't believe the year I've had. You know, this happened medically. This happened financially. This happened in a relationship. This happened with my boss. This happened, you know, and it's like, I get it. But the word is still true. It's fix your eyes on Jesus. Okay? That's how to beat the haziness, is to pursue and practice your priorities. But wait, there's more. Not only do we have a bad case of the hazies that can work against us, we also have a bad case of the lazies, L-A-Z-I-E-S, a bad case of the lazies. And the laziness that I'm talking about is defined this way: lacking the self-discipline to bring your life into balance. Lacking the self-discipline to bring your life back into balance. I've made a lifetime of speaking on balancing work and life in churches, in conferences, in corporate events, in Fortune 500 companies, in athletic teams, and I can tell you that I have heard every excuse known to man why they're not experiencing a balanced life. And it very rarely includes anything that they have control over. You want me to be balanced? Why don't you tell my boss? You want me to be balanced? Why don't you give me a way to work with this troubled teenager in my house? You want me to be balanced in my life? Then you tell me how I'm supposed to get rid of this medical condition. You know, and there's all this stuff, and I get it. But at the end of the day, the person that's responsible for balance in your life is sitting right next to the person next to you. That's you. You're the only one that can do it. You're the only one that can make that difference. And we hear this all the time. One of the most obvious ways we struggle with this is parent-child relationships or husband-wife relationships, where the wife or the kids essentially say, "Where are you? We never see you. You are gone all the time." Well, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and I'm working hard, and I'm making a lot of hours and working a lot hard to give you a roof over your head. Hey, I know that, and that's good. But we also need to realize that there's time that we're not going to get back if we don't use it now to invest in the lives of our spouse and our kids. I gave this presentation one time, and this guy came up to me after it was over, and he's one of the biggest guys I ever saw. And I don't mean like blubbery, I mean like ripped. This guy looked like a linebacker in the NFL. It was a corporate event, it wasn't a football player. But he came up to me and he said, "Man, you really got me with this talk today." He said, "Because I just had an experience with my little boy that really is ripping my heart apart." I said, What's going on? He said, "My little boy, probably about 8 years old, he came up to me and he said, 'Daddy, I got to tell you something.'" And he said, "What, son?" He said, "You don't know this, but I've been saving all my allowance that you've been giving me. And I know, he doesn't get a lot. It gets maybe a quarter or 50 cents a week kind of thing. But he says, I haven't spent any of it. I've put it all in a jar, and I counted it. Mommy counted it with me. I got $8.40. I got $8.40. And the guy said, "That's great, son." He says, "Daddy, you want to know what I'm going to do with the $8.40? He said, "Yeah, what are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to give it to you. Because if I give you this $8.40, do you think you can stay home and play with me one day?" And the guy just melted. And I mean, a big man crying is something you remember. And it's like, we've all had situations like that. And it's like, you know what? It's a busy time. I realize that. But you only get one shot with these guys. And we need to realize that we want to minister to them, and we've got to make the hard decision. It may be something that you can't figure out on your own. You might need someone to help you, but you got to do it. Okay? If you're going to beat the lazies, you've got to pursue and practice, here's the next word, endurance. You got to be in this for the long haul. You got to pursue and practice endurance. Because notice it says that in the text. We are laying aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance. Old King James said it, run with patience the race that is set before us. that, the whole question of can you have it all and can you have it now? It might not be. It might take some time. You're taking a more gradual approach so that you can be more holistic in your life. You're not just living for the next promotion. You're not just giving all your hours to somebody else. You realize you gotta balance your life so that you're involved with everybody else. And now's a good time to insert, because of my age, I'm talking to a lot of guys that have, quote unquote, retired from their workaday world, and they're in a whole new season of their life. And you know what? Balance is still as elusive to a retiree as it is to some young buck who's working 90 hours a week. And it's because it's just the nature of the sin inside of us. We get all cockeyed, and we need to realize we got to do something that will really make a difference. Now, here we go, spoiler alert. What I'm going to do for the rest of the weekend is I'm going to take each message and talk about these three things, and I'll give you the third one, and we'll wrap it up. Tomorrow morning, we're going to talk a little more in depth about haziness. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk a little bit more about laziness, and then Sunday morning, we're going to talk about the third one, which is a bad case of the crazies. A bad case of the crazies. And craziness is defined as a lifestyle that's out of control. A lifestyle that is out of control. It's that whole idea in the text where it says, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that's set before us. If you omit the word endurance, because we already discussed it, you've got the words run the race set before us. We end where I began tonight. The race is a metaphor for our lives. And nobody wants their race to end at the 3:30 when you could have had a 4:40 in you. And it could happen at the 3:30 because of this issue that we're talking about, and that's balance. And if you will allow me the slick play on words, balance in your life is demonstrated by the way you run the race. If you don't run well, you may trip, you may fall. And what's another way to say you trip or you fall? You've lost your balance. And so nobody signs up for that. Yeah, I want to run a race where I'm going to fall flat on my face 3/4 of the way through. No, we all want to live out the life that God has given us for as long as he had in mind. And so we want to talk about how to focus in, fix our eyes on Jesus, and see how that's going to help us work this race that we're running. The antidote to craziness is to beat the crazies, pursue and practice pacing, okay? Pacing, P-A-C-I-N-G. It's the runner's equivalent to balance. If I had paced myself in the 4:40, I wouldn't have lost it all at the 3:30. I would have had some energy left to finish. I probably wouldn't have won, but I could have finished, okay? It's about pacing yourself. That's what life is all about. And I realize in this world, there are plenty of people in this room that are hard charging, and your vocation requires it. But I'm saying, you know what? This is just going to be a little bit of a stretch for you to see maybe if it's time to figure out a way to have all the areas of your life living the way Christ wants you to do it. So let me wrap up with a very wonderful piece of counsel I got when I was a lot younger. I have 5 children. I have a daughter and I have 4 sons. And because of the nature of what I do this. I travel and speak to different groups. And so, for example, I do this a lot, and it's weekends. And so kids' weekend soccer games, kids' weekend Little League games, I didn't see a lot of those. And if I wasn't called on it, I would think, well, the kids will just have to understand. It's like, no, your kids want to see you at these games. And it's like, but nobody has a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday weekend men's retreat. What am I going to do? I said, well, you better figure out something. And so I got creative with my kids, and it was like my kids could finally say when their friends said, why does your dad never come to your soccer game? He said, oh, well, he's working on weekends, but he comes and picks me up from school every Wednesday, and we go get ice cream. And it's the greatest time in the week. And it's like, okay, if Wednesday ice cream is a way to salve that wound a little bit, it's good, because none of the other kids are doing that. And I can't be there on Saturday. Maybe they can do better with the Wednesday thing. It's a constant issue. It's a constant battle. And so when I was putting together, I wrote a book on this, and we were looking at research, and I saw this wonderful thing that I grabbed onto. There is an author named Richard Bowles, Dick Bowles. If you were ever out of work, he wrote the book, What Color is Your Parachute? How to Do a Resume and all that. Some of you guys are nodding. Well, he has another book that's much lesser known. It's called The 3 Boxes of Life. Anybody know The 3 Boxes of Life book? Yeah, nobody's ever heard of it. And it's even more brilliant than What Color is Your Parachute? Bowles suggests to every man in this room that the way the American culture is designed is that all of us are in one of 3 boxes in our life right now. The first box is the box of learning. These are the years we go to school. You go to school, or your parents will go to jail, all right? So you go to school. If your kids are anything like mine, Dad, why do we have to go to so much school? Typical American answer, you go to so much school so that you can land yourself a good job. Second box, the box of labor. I work, I work. I work, I work, I work. I work, I work, I work, I work. I work, I work, I work. Your spouse says to you, man, you're crazy. You're killing yourself. Why are you working so hard? Because one of these days, I'm going to retire. The box of leisure. I'm going to get a condo on a golf course, so I'm going to play that every day. And when I die, I'm going to cremate my ashes. I'm going to spread it over that 13th green. Could never par it. I'm going to kill it. And for those darker in the room, there is a 4th box that they'll put you in, but we're not going there yet, okay? So I think that's brilliant just in its own way, that you can see how we get locked into these boxes. But Bowles goes on and he says, you know what? The way to live effectively, the way to live healthy, the way to live a balanced life is to move through all 3 boxes at every phase of your life. For example, your kids who have to go to school. One of these days, they're going to be faced with some of these other boxes. What are you doing in advance? Well, okay, let's see. They've got learning because they're going to school. I think they're going to do all right on leisure. Kids seem to know how to play. What kids need is some help with labor. Get your kid a job. Get him doing chores around the house. And when he's old enough, get him a job. I mean, do what you did. Get them their first job. Lie about your age. Get them in there and let them get into the workforce. And forgive me, Father, work on, that element with your children, okay? And then those of us that are in the workaday world, all right? When's the last time you read a book? When's the last time you thought about auditing a college class at the junior college? When's the last time, we're like, oh, no, I don't have time. When's the last time you read a book? 8th grade, Little Women. What in the world am I doing reading Little Women? Well, there might be books that would help you. Yeah, read, study, go to lectures, come to a men's retreat. See, you're already ahead, you're here. That bozo that said he was coming and didn't come, he's missing out, all right? He could have had some learning. And then leisure, Why are you waiting till you retire to do all the fun stuff that you want to do? I mean, even God rested. We're going to look at that this weekend too. That, it's not all push, push, push. That there is reason for, hey, I'm just chilling. I'm just taking it easy, okay? And then retirement, okay? They understand, boy. They know about, hey, I'm going to go get myself a library card, and I'm going to be a reader, and I'm going to take classes, and I'm going to watch videos on TV and everything. And then my dad is my all-time favorite example. If you ever played Monopoly, my dad worked on one of the railroads on the Monopoly board, the Reading Railroad, okay? All the Butterworths are railroad people. I'm the first non-railroad Butterworth in a million generations, okay? And I heard that a lot, okay? So my dad, 40 plus years on the Reading Railroad, he retires. He's in Pennsylvania. I was living in California at the time. He calls me one day, and he's whispering over the phone. And I go, hey, Dad, how's retirement? How's it going? He goes, son, your mother, she's killing me. And before I could say anything, he goes, but don't worry, I just took care of it. And the way he said that, I had this mental picture of my mother lying down on the floor, dead. I said, Dad, what are you talking about? He said, oh, don't worry. I just got me a job. I said, Dad, you just retired. Don't worry, don't worry. Doesn't mess with my Social Security. That's all he ever talked about was, I don't want anything to mess up my Social Security. I said, well, what's your job? He says, well, it's part-time. Well, what? He says, well, down at the old folks' home, they gave me a new passenger van, and I drive old people to their medical appointments. I said, oh, Dad, that sounds great. And, of course, I'm kind of holding a smirk like he's describing all the other people as old people, and he's a retiree, but he's driving them all to their medical appointments at the hospital. Well, he's not done. He says, now, I always wanted to do stand-up comedy. He says, so from the senior center down to the hospital, I'm in the driver's seat, and I'm cracking one joke after another, and the people love it. He says, I'm a hit. They are just freaked out. The van is jammed every afternoon. I am the most popular thing at the senior center's got going on. I said, Dad, you're on a roll, man. He said, oh, yeah, it's great. I give them my stuff, and they laugh, and it's terrific. And he keeps talking about the bus is full, the bus is full, the van is full, the van is full. And then he lets it leak. He says, yeah, boy, that van is full every day. And, some days there's like 3 or 4 people in the van who actually have appointments. I said, Dad, you're driving 15 people to the medical center and only 3 of them need to go? He goes, son, you ever been to one of those senior centers? The van is where it's at. Now, there's a smart guy, a smart Butterworth. He was having his leisure. He still had some labor, and till his dying day, I remember him tutoring little preschoolers on their letters and their numbers, and just a heartwarming picture. I miss my dad. But what a great example of moving through those 3 areas every time. Now, if there's nothing else that you can glean from tonight as I wrap it up, you can at least take those 3 boxes and give yourself a grade on each of them. You're in one of them now. In this group, I'd say probably most of us are in the labor force, okay? But what kind of grade are you giving yourself as a learner? What kind of grade are you giving yourself in the world of leisure? And the retirees, you don't get a free pass because you got it all 3 boxes as well. And if there's kids here, you got to deal with it too. It's that important. So what we're going to look at are the hazies, the lazies, and the crazies. And we're going to branch out of Hebrews 12, and we're going to look at some other passages that are going to give us some counsel on what the balanced life should look like. So let me close in prayer, and then I'm going to have the band come up and lead us in one last song, and then we'll be dismissed. Thank you, Lord, for the fact that you love us and you want us to have a healthy, balanced life. I pray for all of us that you would help us stay on balance and not lose our balance and fall. Help us be men who put you first, that we look to you. We fix our eyes on Jesus so that we can be the kind of children, the kind of men that you want us to be. We love you, Lord. Thank you for the attention of these men tonight. Give them good rest. They've traveled long. They're tired. May we come back tomorrow refreshed. learning what you would have us to learn. In Jesus' name I pray these things. Everyone said, amen.